Zenless Zone Zero is a video game with lots of characters you should consider pulling, and what characters you will want to pull will depend greatly on the current state of your account. In this video, we're going to go over what characters are must pulls, what characters you should probably avoid, and be discussing every possible state your account can be in. So we're going to see a lot of choices here. A lot of these probably won't apply to you. You're gonna see a character on this list and think, why would that character ever be a must pull? And the answer probably is going to be it wouldn't for your current situation. But for someone else, it absolutely would be. Also, for the characters that are kind of like universal, the opposite of must pull, so like not pulls, I guess, understand I have 3 characters on the not pull section. So like, again, if you're a waifu puller or you like a husband puller, whatever, and you love these characters, go for it, because I did and I am doing fantastic. I pulled a Mindscape on one of them, which is, I guess, like spoiler alert. One of the characters is Harumasa. You know, if Harumasa comes up, you probably shouldn't pull him unless you like him, which I did. I loved Harumasa, so I got his M1 because he was already free at the time. I'll also be discussing any counterpoints here and there for why you wouldn't want to pull any of the characters on my must pull list. As of right now, the current version is 1.6 with Triggers banner just dropping, and I think I said everything. Yep, think so. I might have said this already, but also like there is no such thing as a true must pull in this game. They don't really exist. You could really make by with the 3 free characters they give you. I mean, I'm a Billy main, alright? I am doing fantastic. So if I'm doing good, anyone can. And I do not consider myself like some kind of a fantastic hyper sweaty player at all. And before we start, please, this is the first video on this channel, so it would help me greatly if you considered liking and subscribing, since early traction is very, very helpful. Must pull number 1, Miyabi. This one shouldn't be a surprise, especially if you're a new player. Miyabi is really fucking good. And this is coming from someone who didn't pull Miyabi. I used my pulls for M1 Harumasa and his Wenjin because I think he's hot. But Miyabi is absolutely incredible. Her power is through the roof. For context, she beats both Haru and Sanby in Electric Week content. She beats Billy, Jane, and Piper in Physical Week content and beats Soldier 11 on Fire Week content. She is absurdly overtuned and an incredible comfort pick. Also, there are no Ice DPS A ranks, nor any Ice DPSs on the standard banner, which is something I noticed a lot for Ice Week content on Deadly Assault. It is a pain. That Bringer boss, I hate him. You could try DPS Sokaku, which isn't actually as crazy as people make it. I think it's actually pretty viable, but I totally understand if you don't want to do that, because it is a pain to get started and build and do all of that. For Shiyu defense, it's not that big of a deal, but that Bringer fight, man, in Deadly Assault is so hard. It is terrible. But what about the person who shouldn't pull for Miyabi? Well, for one, I won't be pulling for Miyabi if she reruns because I am very interested in Hugo Vlad. And while I don't expect Hugo Vlad to do Miyabi numbers at all, I mean, she's a motherfucking Void Hunter, he's going to get me through Ice Week content. Also, you have to consider, will you also pull for her W engine? For those of you who don't know, Miyabi was designed in a way where her Wenjin is her best in slot engine by far. There aren't really any great free-to-play alternatives to it, since she is a crit scaling anomaly agent, which is really weird. Now, you really don't need it if you get some insane substat rolls, so if you have that, go for it, right? Like, you really don't need to worry. If you hit something like 50 or 60% crit rate, you're doing fine. You want to hit 80, but 60, you're gonna do great, you know, regardless. Caesar. Some people have claimed she's overrated, and if you just dodge, you'll be fine. And to that, I have to say that that is kind of bullshit. Caesar is a physical agent who provides a 1000 attack buff and a shield that is a massive anti-interruption effect. First of all, the obvious, she's an obvious comfort pick. Let's talk about that shield. Sure, you could be a dodge master, but you know, being able to take hits is very comfortable. Also, I don't see enough people talking about this, but what about longer combos? For example, Miyabi, she loves to do that thing where she holds her attack to use her Falling Frost. You know, you don't want to take damage during that, and her shield, Caesar's shield, helps with that. Another example, Piper. Piper loves to hold her EX special, but in things like shield defense, that could mean having to blunt a lot of damage. With Caesar's shield, again, comboing with Piper's X-spin attack is a lot easier. But what about the guy who doesn't want to pull? But what about the guy that doesn't want to pull for Caesar? Well, I'll be honest, I can't think of a reason that you wouldn't want to pull Caesar if you don't have her already that isn't super specific. I guess if you're clearing content already very nicely, then the reasons I stated prior probably don't really stand out to you. You're clearing content comfortably anyways, so you probably don't need her. Oh, and I will also add, for every quote-unquote must-pull character, if you are clearing content comfortably, you obviously do not need them. Lighter! Now a lot of y'all will think this is a weird take. Lighter's buff is very niche. He buffs fire and ice characters, and that's it. But I will say, he buffs them a fucking lot. Before we get into my greater point, I'll say if your main DPS is a fire or ice agent, Lighter is such an obvious must-pull. The amount of buffing he does for those two is ludicrous. It is insane. The best attack characters in the game right now are fire and ice characters, being Evelyn and Miyabi, of course. And I think it's also worth noting that Hugo is coming soon. I have this theory, and it's just a theory, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think the current best elements in the game right now are fire and ice, and it will stay like that. Ice Anomaly, if you time it right, can freeze enemies during the stun window, which completely stops their stun window, and Fire Anomaly has the best damage over time effect. While non-anomaly characters will proc Anomaly a little less frequently, especially if they're more off-field, they will still do a respectable amount of time, which is worth keeping in mind, and Lighter buffs those elements the best in-game. Also, I am only talking about Anomaly since that is the only real thing that differentiates fire and ice and electric and whatever characters, it's what their anomaly effect is, right? Additionally, he is a very viable DPS at M0, which that by itself isn't anything crazy. However, it does mean that as a stunner, you can build him as a half stun, half DPS role. And because of his effect buffing fire DPS, he also buffs his own aura attack quite a bit. So he does great damage while he's trying to stun the enemy, especially if you have his S-rank stun engine on him, giving him a lot of impact, giving you room to use different drive discs that don't boost his impact. His best trait, in my opinion, which makes him even viable with non-fire and ice teams, is the 3 seconds he adds to the stun window, especially with stun windows getting faster and faster, and enemies having stun window multipliers that make their stun windows even faster. Lighter, who, under the hood, actually pauses the stun window, makes using stun stuff very comfortable. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the pause makes it so it is completely unaffected by stun window multipliers that some enemies have. Now, why would you not want him? Well, if your best DPSs or most often DPSs aren't fire or ice characters, then you probably don't want him. I did a few points on why he's useful even without fire and ice characters, but buffing fire and ice is his bread and butter. If you don't have at least one fire and ice character, he is really truly not worth it at all just for that 3 seconds. Also, if you're free to play, he probably also doesn't seem very appealing. I believe the only free to play options for Lighter are Soldier 11, who is the only fire DPS on the standard banner, and that is really it. There is no A rank fire or ice DPS, and no ice DPS on the standard banner as mentioned before. So he is very understandably not quite appealing to the new player. I'd say that if you have at least one fire and ice attacker or I guess anomaly, any DPS, then he is very worth it. But besides that, not really. You know, for example, I missed Evelyn, but I will pull her on a rerun, and Hugo is coming soon, who I am definitely snagging. So Ladder is a very, very good pick for my account. Astra, do I really need to explain this? Astra was the first limited support agent in Zenless Zone 0. She provides a 1200 attack buff, additional crit damage, and consistent quick assist. She also can be a decibel generating machine with the amount of quick assists she provides, as well as an additional 2 chain attacks for the next quick assists that are triggered after her own ultimate. She actually pairs extremely well with Nicole for a double support hyper carry team, plus Nicole's crit rate buff on her M6 combined with Astra's crit damage buff lets your attackers do a shit ton of damage, consistently doing critical hits, and is ridiculously easy to play with the cost of a singular EX special and you are good as gold. Normally I would put a reason here for like a scenario why you wouldn't want to pull Astra, but I legitimately cannot think of one. Besides, you know, you're completing content comfortably. At best, I can just think like you just don't like the gameplay, which is totally fair. I've seen a lot of people say it feels like you're playing with 2 players, which is not appealing to some people. For me, I don't mind that much. I think it's quite fun actually, the consistent quick stop gameplay, but a lot of people don't like it, which is fair. It's a matter of preference, so if that doesn't sound very appealing to you, you know, maybe consider trying out her demo first and seeing how it feels when she reruns, you know, doing the demo thing. It also gives you polychrome, so actually try it out and see how you like it. Burnice! Now this is only for people who are very interested in the anomaly meta. If you're interested in the anomaly meta, then Burnice I think is a must. She's an off-field flaming phenomenon. Burnice White, an agent who can burn foes and still do damage, inflicting fire anomaly while off-field, as they have a flame effect allowing for very easy disorders. She pairs wonderfully with every single anomaly agent. She's also very free-to-play friendly, pairing very well with Piper and Lucy. Lucy, who's a free A rank, and Piper, who's an A rank who you can get your hands on pretty easily with a couple of pulls, who in my opinion is very powerful, at the very least as powerful as a standard S rank character. Like if Piper was a standard S rank character, her power level would make complete sense. She's extremely powerful. In my opinion, she's a S rank in disguise, Piper. So, and she pairs ridiculously well with Burnice. Burnice is also very future-proof. With every new anomaly agent that comes out, they will pair masterfully. Maybe not mass. They'll pair nicely with her. The only ones who wouldn't would be a new fire anomaly agent, really, since they wouldn't trigger any disorders. Also, while Burnice is generally best off-field, you can use her on-field. Since I don't have Evelyn, I've been using her on-field a lot with Fire Week content, and it works just fine. I got 3 stars in Deadly Assault, I'm chillin'. Even if a new Fire Anomaly agent came out, I'd imagine they wouldn't power creep Burnice. They'd probably be an on-field Fire Anomaly agent, giving each of the characters their own niches. Now for why you wouldn't want to pull for her? Well, personally, if you don't find the gameplay loop of Anomaly Disorder teams very appealing, that's very obvious, but besides that, if you have the polychrome, I think it's worth it. Even if you have Fire DPS or Evelyn, you know, you could pair her up for other teams like Jane and Piper. Maybe Miyabi, I think Miyabi too. Like all of that are very solid teams that trigger disorders which do that do massive damage. The thing about anomaly agents are that every time a new anomaly agent comes out, every single anomaly agent pretty much gets a buff. Now for some honorable mentions. Zhu Yuan. I don't think she's a must pull, but I think she is worth discussing. The devs have said that ether agents will be rare, and Zhu Yuan right now is the only ether DPS agent in the game. Now this is kind of an artificial problem with supply and demand, but I do think that Vivian coming out next patch kinda solves this issue. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, most ether weak agents, most ether weak enemies have a second weakness, even if you don't have an ether agent, so like Ice, for example. Even if you don't, Nicole is free and her black holes aren't doing crazy damage, but they are affecting ether weak enemies, so if you build her well, you'll be fine. Another honorable mention are Qingyi and Trigger, which is kind of weird to say since Trigger is out right now, but like if she were to rerun in the future, you know, if you're watching this in the future, Trigger as a honorable mention. I'm pairing them up together because they're very similar, and I don't mean that they have the same class and attribute. It's actually the ways they buff. They feel like mirrors of each other. Qingyi actually was in the must pull section at first, but then I saw Trigger and saw how they're like opposites to each other, and I want to discuss them together. Qingyi is an electric stunner who provides a massive damage buff during the stun window. She was basically a universal stunner, being able to do well in any team, but doing best for burst DPSs like Zhu Yuan and Harumasa. And even for teams where Qingyi wasn't the absolute best in slot stunner, she was still doing really well because of that massive buff she provides during the stun window, allowing your DPSs to unload massive damage during the stun window. The reason she's now off of here is because Trigger is also kind of a universal stunner, except instead of working for off-field DPS agents best, she works best for greedier on-field DPSs. So think your Anbys, Billies, I'm drawing a blank, but like other characters like that. And while her buff isn't as massive as Qingyi's, the buff from Trigger applies outside of the stun window as well, so it's basically like the character is stunned all the time. So your damage is buffed all the time, which is extremely good for on-field DPSs. So really, for Qingyi and Trigger, between them two, it depends on who your DPS is that you're looking to improve or looking to buff, or the team you're looking to upgrade. You know, it depends on that DPS. If it's a DPS like Harumasa and Zhu Yuan, then you want Qingyi. If it's a DPS like Billy or Anby, then you want Trigger. Between the two, I don't know which one is better, just because Qingyi's buff is so much better, but Trigger's buff is applied all the time, 24/7. Really would depend on your DPS, so consider that. I guess I would kind of consider them both must pulls now that I think about it. Like Zhu Yuan, who I mentioned earlier, I said she was an honorable mention because I just don't think she's a must play. I don't think she's very important if you don't want her already. Of course, if you think she's wife, pull her, please. Don't let me stop you. But for Qingyi and Trigger, I think you should have at least one. Unless you're like super cracked out in the anomaly meta and have like no interest in DPS agents. Which I feel like at a certain point, you're going to see a DPS agent that makes you swoon and think like, oh my god, I need them. And in that case, you know, you'd have a Trigger or a Qingyi sitting on the shelf to use with them, right? Now for the not pulls, or the must not pulls. Oh, that sounds way better. I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. I want to make it clear again, out of the characters on this list, there are 4 characters on this list. I have 3 of them, or I have 2 of them, and then I M1'd one of them. But like, you have to understand, I like a lot of these characters. If you like them too, please pull them. Zenless Zone Zero is a skill-based game. So regardless of who's on this not pull list, they are still going to do fucking fantastic if you're good enough and build them properly. I promise you. Ellen, my goat. No, not my goat. I don't have Ellen. Yeah, this is unfortunate. She's just not super good. Like even 1.0, I feel like she was at best standard banner worthy, but she does not feel like a limited S rank agent. She is on the same level of Soldier 11. Actually, I think I saw some calcs the other day that showed that she was almost exactly on the same level as Soldier 11 in power level. She does have the privilege of being an ice attack character, which is very hard to come by, but like Hugo is coming next patch, Miyabi, and I feel guilty for comparing her to Miyabi because it's so unfair, but it is really difficult to avoid. There's just a lot of crossover between people who like Miyabi and Ellen, so if you like both, the choice is also pretty obvious there. Like, I'd understand Hugo between Hugo and Miyabi, because like husbando lovers would obviously want Hugo over Miyabi. But like, dude, with Ellen, it's just rough. Also, like, yeah, I mean, if you don't like Miyabi's playstyle because you think she's too easy and doesn't require a lot of skill, it's very valid. In that case, I would pick up Ellen because she is quite a skillful character. You know, you need to know what you're doing to make her good. But also, like, she kinda needs Lycon or Lighter. If you don't have either, I really wouldn't recommend pulling for her. in a rerun unless you're really good. Now, luckily, Lygon is a standard banner agent, so he's not impossible to get, but like, you know, it is rough. Now, I did see the stat that a lot of people are pushing that apparently M6 Ellen is better than M0 Miyabi. That's not true. That's not true. However, the gap between M6 Ellen and M0 Miyabi is not very big. Like, she is better than M0 Miyabi, but like, she's M6, dude. She should be a lot better, not just a bit better, you know? It's unfortunate. Again, if you want her, don't let me stop you. Your enjoyment of the game is far more important than whatever the meta is. However, if you're just looking for an ice DPS, cause like you're struggling with Bringer or something, I would recommend Miyabi or Hugo, not Ellen, if that's the only reason you want to pull Ellen. Jane Doe, one of my favorite characters in the game, and like, I'm going to be honest, she is so hot, dude. Like, oh my lord. Yeah, she's fantastic, but like, if we're talking purely about numbers, she is only slightly better than a well-piloted M6 Piper, who is an A rank. She is not crazy. She's still good, and like I said, Piper is really good, so being better than Piper is not that much of an insult. But if you aren't like in love with her character, then, and you have a Piper just sitting around, for physical weak content, Piper is more than doing the job. Harumasa, dude, he is also really, really hot, like, dude. He's good looking, man. But yeah, like I really wouldn't recommend him. He does, in my opinion, have the most satisfying gameplay. Like, mastering Harumasa's gameplay is incredibly euphoric and so satisfying. It's really worth learning, especially if you got him for free. I highly recommend learning it just for fun, have some fun, you know, live a little, have some fun. Let's have some fun. We have fun around here, right? But yeah, if he's rerunning and you don't love that complicated, very difficult playstyle, then you probably don't want him, you know? A lot of people think he's very hard to play, which is why a lot of people have not even bothered like building him. You know, we got a bunch of materials to build him up to level 60, and a lot of people just didn't use them because they thought he was really bad at first, because he was hard to play. And it is basically like he's a skill issue character, you know? If you don't play him well, he's going to do terribly. If you play him well, then you're gonna get 60k in Deadly Assault. You know, some people are pulling off some crazy, nasty ass numbers. It is wonderful to see. There's this YouTuber called R2. He does some crazy shit with Harumasa, and it is wonderful to watch. It is wonderful to watch. I highly recommend watching it. However, if you don't want to do all that work, then I totally understand it, totally get it, and you probably don't want to pull for him. Especially if you have him for free, you know, like M1 Harumasa is just comfort. And this is set from someone who pulled M1 Harumasa. It is purely just comfort. But, you know, if you don't have him, and you love high skill characters, I highly recommend him. Though, maybe like use the demo first, or if you have a friend who has Harumasa, you know, ask if you'd borrow their accounts for a bit. I really hope Zenless gets that feature where you can like rent out other characters or something. I heard about that. I don't play other gacha games, so I don't know what it's actually like, but it sounds very fun. I hope they have that, because I really want people to experience how fun Harumasa is. But I also understand why people might be a little more adverse to first going through all the effort of using your pulls on him and then learning him. You know, like, I get that. But yeah, you know, if he sounds very appealing to you, or you think he's hot, or you played his agent story and you love him like I do, then pull for him. But if none of those are really talking to you, speaking to you, then, you know, you probably want to skip him if he ever does rerun. And that wraps it up. Is there anything on this list that should have been there? Anything that should have not been here? Anything that should have been on the don't pulls list? Also, take a peek at the comment section, see if I pinned anything myself. Because if y'all have changed my minds, then I will put my thoughts there. Besides that, thank you for watching, and please, I'm on my hands and knees, brother. Please consider liking and subscribing. It would help me a whole darn. And thank you for watching. Thank you for getting this far. Bye.